Spencer. Welcome to Locked In, man. Thank you for coming out here. This is your second trip to the studio because you were on someone else's podcast that was using our studio. Yeah, well, we appreciate you coming back.
Thanks for having me.
You came from Long Island. Did you grow up there?
Yeah, I grew up on Long Island. Ran away to California for a couple of years. Lived on Fire Island a little bit. I went from one big island to a little island, and just ran around. I was always in Manhattan and Brooklyn, but Long Island was where I rested my head.
Who'd you grow up with?
I had two siblings, two parents. Both my parents are disabled. My brother got me into the life of the gray area. And he was able to get out. I don't know. I just fell in love with shortcuts and fast money and escaping from drugs and alcohol and crime. And I don't know. Some people just outgrow things, and I just couldn't,
Were your parents disabled your whole life?
Basically, yeah. My dad had multiple sclerosis ever since I was a young kid. And my mom had 3 stage 4 cancer battles. And she beat them all. But all the chemicals they threw in her and, the chemos and the radiations and all the surgeries, it just tapped her out.
Was there another relative that helped to raise you guys?
No. We just figured it out. I think that's where a lot of my beginning substance abuse issues came from, the life of uncertainty, not knowing how to handle emotions and stuff like that. I think it had a little hand in expediting the process, but who knows? An addict's an addict. I was probably born an addict. But I was committing. By the time I got older, probably 17, 18. I was committing 15 felonies before lunchtime. It was just normal. If you were a normal, law-abiding human being, you probably freaked me out, And eventually your whole life becomes all the, surrounding yourself with toxic, negative people, And, that's just, I basically just, everything I learned was on the street. If I would have went to school, I would have lost all my money.
College, you mean high school? Did you go to a regular high school?
Yeah, I went to a regular, normal high school, public school. The stuff that we got away with in public school is like, I think about it, I'm just like, how did all that go down? The things I can tell you what happened in school, I mean, today I can't ever see happening, But I guess like the generations before us probably said the same shit. Like the stuff that went down during their time probably would have never happened during my time.
But they're all similar in some type of variation. Yeah. Like my dad would tell me stories about how they would toilet paper houses, and we did that, but we would take it a step further. And there's always one little variation of that generation in each story too. Yeah,
I once bought like 30 yards of shit and dumped it in front of somebody's house.
What do you mean shit? Like horse poop?
Like manure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Like, it's all the same story, just different details, but today it's so much different.
How would you describe yourself as a kid?
I was a loner. Like, I loved drifting away. Like, when I was a real young kid, I would take my bike, get on the Long Island Railroad and go into the city and just meet random people and get into random shit. And I was always a deep thinker. But in between all that, there was definitely a ton of fear, unknown, uncertainty. But I was always wondering, like, what the whole point of this whole thing is. Like, why am I here? What's going on? What's my purpose? Like, I was a deep thinker, but at the same time, probably lost,
Did you guys struggle for money because of your parents' disabilities?
Yeah, like, if my mom was half dead, my dad was half alive. If my mom was half alive, my dad was half dead. But for some reason we managed to be in like a nice middle class area on Long Island, but you could be in the same town as somebody and be struggling 5 times more, but still hang on,
What were their careers before they got disabled?
They both had a business, a printing business. And for a few years when my dad wasn't too bad, it was pretty good. But, I guess maybe like a few years before COVID happened, they just got wiped out. If you don't, just like I'm a big tech guy. If you don't remain flexible and open to new technology, and if you remain stagnant, you're done in any business, any industry. You have to just keep emerging, keep growing. And the second you get comfortable, that's when you're on the chopping block. Eventually time will take you out.
Did you end up graduating high school?
Yeah, of course.
But you never went off to college?
I was offered a full ride to a few schools. I was a big athlete. I was a wrestler.
You were a wrestler?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I wrestled ever since I was in second grade. That was probably my escape. I didn't really have a choice. I was forced to wrestle. My brother, my father, they just said, you're wrestling. And I got my ass beat for like the first 2 years. I don't think I won a match. Like, I got comfortable getting my head bashed in. You know how like you get comfortable in your misery? Like, you've been in prison, You get the people who do prison best are the ones who get comfortable in their misery. And then one day I just woke up and I was like, no, fuck, I'm never getting manhandled again. And I became really good. It was probably one of my escapes.
Why did you decide not to go to college for wrestling?
I couldn't figure out who I was. I didn't know if I was a drug addict, a drug dealer, or an athlete. Couldn't figure it out. I had this huge monkey on my back. I couldn't figure it out. The drugs got deeper and deeper and deeper, and the athletics got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I remember being in the state semifinals in wrestling with a half a liter of vodka in me. Like, I couldn't, like, who the hell drinks a half a liter of vodka 5 hours before a wrestling match heading into state finals? Like, only a sick, scared little boy would do something like that.
And no one noticed?
A few of my teammates knew, but if you want to know where those guys are, 2 of them are dead. You either end up in prison, institutions, or death.
What was your drug of choice aside from alcohol?
I would snort and shoot heroin. I would always shoot coke, shoot heroin within the same hour. Psychedelics were a big part of my, I guess, my drug career. And then I would always take a handful of Xanax to put me out. So it was basically, and then obviously the alcohol. I was a big whiskey guy. Loved whiskey. I would literally wake up in the morning and drink whiskey, like warm. Like, it had to be there. Otherwise I'd shake. Like, my hips would shake, my fingers would shake. But I got comfortable with the acceptance of knowing I'm fucked up. Like, I never wanted help because my ego was way too big. But, one thing leads to another, and the alcohol was big in my life. Alcohol, the depressants, you need the depressants. Because when you're depressed, you need it. And then you rely on the short-term effects, shorter and shorter and shorter. It's like a best friend that you're just willing to forgive constantly because you're always chasing that first high. Like, you get this high when you're young, and it's like in your brain, and you'll never forget it. And then you're always chasing that high that you have built into your mind your whole life. And people ask me, like, what is heroin like? And I'm like, you ever, like, think about the most evil thing in the world, and then think about yourself selling your soul to it. No matter how evil it is, you're willing to die for it. But because it's so good, that's what I would compare heroin to. I would snort it all throughout the day. And then at night when I know I didn't need to function, or if I was like put, then I would shoot up. But it was definitely a big monkey on my back. And I could have never quit on my own. If the feds didn't take me out of my misery, I would probably be dead.
Do you think you were trying to escape something?
Oh, absolutely.
What do you think that was?
I feel like I'm going to talk for a lot of addicts. Maybe, who knows, in the comments, they're going to shit on me. But a lot of addicts drink and drug because they don't want to grow up and deal head on with their issues that they're dealing with. Like, there's so many underlining issues going on, and you're just willing to buy. Your ego says, I can buy my way out of this just for tonight. And you drink it away, drug it away, pass out, black out. And it's that temporary, like, 5 hours of, like, silence up here. That's what you're buying. You're buying temporary relief, temporary peace. But that's the best friend that I refer to. Like, my best friend was alcohol and drugs. And I was willing to forgive it every time it let me down. Every time that drink and drug let me down, I instantly forgave it. I said, don't worry, we'll just do more next time. We'll just do more. I've had 2 self-induced heart attacks from drugs and alcohol. I've had people shoot at me. Like, you name it. Like, everything. I had 2 best friends murdered over this life. A fiance of mine overdosed and died. Like, everything I had, loved, lost, almost had, was just ruined by a meaningless life. Like, I was definitely emotionally and spiritually bankrupt at all costs. But the second that I found God, and my whole life changed. The second I found sobriety, it was like a whole new different journey. It's like you find the keys to the universe and you're like, oh my God, I got something big here. And then like, this experience that you're experiencing is so freaking wild that you're like, I got to keep this shit to myself. Because people could think I'm cracked out of my head. And then you develop a relationship with God. And, when I found sobriety in the shoe, when I got out, I didn't even feel like I was in prison. I did a year and a month straight in solitary. That was my first run. When they got me out of solitary, I didn't even feel like I was in prison. I was in one of the worst. I was actually in this place 3 times. Unit 43 in Brooklyn, MDC. They say it's one of the worst units. Every time I was in 43, I didn't even feel like I was in prison. It was just, for some people, it was a nightmare. For me, I was like on a high.
What happened after high school that led you on to that path to prison?
I couldn't understand how the regular world was making it. I didn't understand how normal people who made $150,000 a year, and even today, that's not a normal job. That's not your average salary, but that's what I implanted in my head. That's what I just couldn't understand how people were making it. Nothing made sense to me. How does one person who makes 6 figures a year pay for all this out here? How is it? It doesn't. The numbers do not add up. And for me, I was like, I'm not going to school. I'm too fried. And I was like, this is the life that I want to live. I'm avoiding responsibility. I'm satisfying my selfish needs, making real fast money. I got involved with Bitcoin in middle of 2009. I knew where it was going to be. And then by 2011, one of the biggest, I had 5 of the biggest accounts on Silk Road in the psychedelic categories. And I had so much money in Bitcoin. I knew where it was going to be. But back then, cashing out was like a whole different ball game. Like, you had to go to the Bitcoin trading center on Wall Street at like 11, 12, 1 in the morning and literally do hand-to-hand transactions with people. and give, back then, there was a 10% VIG. All the Bitcoin people who have been involved in Bitcoin back then, the VIG was 10%. So if Bitcoin was $100, you're paying $110 for a Bitcoin. And I would give my Bitcoin away at cost. But you're doing like a hand-to-hand transaction with people in the back rooms with all the cash counters. And as long as I had enough money to survive and live my meaningless life and live in the W hotel and go run around from hotel to hotel, and as long as I had enough money to survive and my drugs and my stashes were where I needed them to be so I could have enough, I didn't really care about much.
Tell the audience what the Silk Road is for the people that don't know, and then what your involvement with it was.
So I had a mentor who was I'm not going to say his name, but he was the head biochemist for the United States Navy, Dow Chemical. He invented MDMA. He invented over 260 synthesis. And I was manufacturing a ton of shit all over the world and using it to run 5 accounts on Silk Road. Silk Road was an underground drug marketplace. First of its kind until like a million of them popped up. But by 2013, the end of 2013, before it went down, on one account I had close to 25 million in Bitcoin. Just on one account. That was seized by the government.
And how'd you obtain that money?
I was a seller, so people would pay you in Bitcoin.
And to sell drugs?
Yeah.
On the black market?
Yeah.
On the dark web?
Yeah. So basically, you're selling drugs to people you don't know, which I knew everyone I was selling to.
So how does it work? Walk us through
So
a transaction.
basically, you're a stranger in a different country, and I'm a seller, and you want to buy X, right? So you would put up your Bitcoin on the Silk Road marketplace. It's basically like a drug escrow account, right? So I'm vetted on Silk Road. I put up my money. I build up all these transactions. People rate you. They rate you. It's almost like the eBay of the drug world. I'm sure there's many of them today, but I would have no clue. And then I would ship the drugs. And then when the drugs get in your city, you would release the escrow and I would get paid.
So it's tracking the drugs, and as soon as it makes it to your city, it releases it.
Yeah.
And so you're going to the post office or FedEx or UPS?
I had a whole system.
Tell us about your system.
Without getting too deep into it, the USPS was my co-conspirator. There's a whole system in play on how you get the drugs to them, how they pick it up. And, without getting too detailed, the USPS was my conspirator.
And what kind of drugs were you selling? Was there anything off limits or?
Lysergic acid dimethyl, LSD, 2CB, 25I, NBMOMEs, LSZ, MDMA.
And where were you getting these drugs from?
They were being manufactured.
In Long Island?
No, all over the world, in 3 different continents.
So you're having people, you're the middleman at like an arms dealer, but for drugs.
Yeah.
People are sending you the money, and then you're sending other people the money to outsource to get the drugs, send it to you.
I may or may not have had a hand in building them. But, yeah, I mean, it probably cost me $9 to make a gram of LSD. A gram of LSD would sell for like $8,000, $8,000 a gram. The profits were ridiculous.
So back then, how do you convert Bitcoin to US dollars to live?
Back then it was like a job. It wasn't as easy as on your phone today. Keep in mind, Bitcoin was unregulated. It was like taboo. People looked at it like monopoly money back then.
They had a couple, I think, Bitcoin ATMs, but that was about it.
But yeah, that was a little later. Like Mike Tyson got involved in all that stuff, but that was even later. Like that was.
So how would you live?
Probably got. I think Tyson and the ATMs started to get big in like 2014, 2015 ish. But in like 2011, 12, 13, it was literally like doing a drug deal. Like I would meet people, or I would have people on my behalf meet people in like Starbucks, and you're literally like getting handed a bunch of cash in public, and they're literally entrusting you to send them the crypto like right to their phone. And these are relationships you build up with people. That's why it was like a nuisance. But I knew where this world was going. Like I was a futurist in whatever I do, I try and predict the future to the best of my ability. If I can't see it clearly, I don't really get involved in it.
What was your username on the Silk Road? Did you have like a funny one?
My biggest name was, I'll show you my indictment when you want, but my biggest username was Billy Madison. And that's on my indictment as well. Billy Madison was the biggest username I had.
That's funny.
Yeah, I was in love with that show.
So how much money do you think you made overall selling drugs on the Silk Road?
I mean, it pains me to even think about it, because it's not like I ever had it. Between all 5 accounts, probably close to probably 45 million.
And why do you need different accounts?
Because if you're too big, then you get people looking at you. You want the accounts to compete against each other. It's like a lot of gas station owners will buy the competing gas station across the street and raise higher prices. Just slightly. Just to make you think that there's 2 people that you can choose from and the consumer has the ability to choose. It's probably the same guy. You don't want to be the biggest fish, because then people are looking at you. And keep in mind, there's no such thing as like anonymity. Like the blockchain ledger is real. Like you do enough activity, they'll find out who you are. Keep in mind, a ledger is a ledger. It's transparent. So you can only do as much as you can to like protect who you are, put up enough digital walls, but everything could be broken. So you want to keep a low profile and have like multiple accounts selling different things, and, you know, make it look like there's competition. And
did you feel bad at all that some of these drugs could have been going to kids? Because back then there was no screening of who the usernames was, no age limit, nothing like that.
I tried not to think about it, to be honest, but it definitely ran through my mind. If I were to get curious enough about who somebody is, I would look into them. I would never sell to a child on the street. Like, you would be surprised the moral compass that most drug dealers are. Like, especially ones that have double lives. Like, they have some sort of moral character to them. I would never sell to a kid if I knew it was a child. But everyone that I would look into, for the most part, like, they were pretty interesting. Like, the people that I would sell drugs to, like, if I would, like, sometimes I'm just like, there's no fucking way this politician's buying my drugs. Like, the people that I would sell to were so interesting. And you kind of just keep it quiet.
Did your family have any idea what you were doing?
Yeah, everyone knew I was a drug addict.
But
everyone knew I was a
dealer.
criminal. Yeah. It was just a matter of when Spencer was going to hit the brick wall.
And how old were you when you were at your peak of this?
25.
No,
24.
You said you like to look into the future when you made decisions. You must have known that one of these individuals you were selling to, or the whole plan in general, could fall apart with law enforcement, something getting stuck in the mail, someone snitching that got bad drugs, or anything could have happened, right?
This one girl I would sell drugs to, we built like a relationship over like 2.5 years. Now, I knew exactly who she was, but she didn't know who I was. I would probably give her about $1.5 million to $2 million worth of drugs on the arm, on top of what she would pay me. But I would always give her more than she would ask for. And she would always pay. But she was in Virginia. This is actually how I got caught. We'll roll into that. So when she got caught, the cops and the feds were like, you mean to tell me that some dude who you've never met, seen, or ever spoken to in the real world gives you $1.5 million to $2 million worth of drugs on the arm. How are we supposed to believe that? And it was dead honestly true. Like, I knew she wasn't going to hold it down and she was going to give them all the information that she had. I had about like $4 million, probably around $4 million in a Chinese bank account in the Great and Eastern Bank of China. And there was two of them, one in Times Square, two in Manhattan and one in Queens. And she gave the feds my username. She gave the feds the Bitcoin wallet address that she pays sometimes. I would have her pay once in a while. I would have her pay on the side. And she just gave the feds as much information as she was able to give. It turned out that that Bitcoin wallet was connected to the Great and Eastern Bank of China. So the feds were able to find out. And back then, a few of the board of directors on Coinbase were federal agents. So Coinbase gave the feds all, opened up their books, and they were able to figure out that a Chinese bank account was connected to the Billy Madison account. And they red flagged it. But the thing is I never walked into the bank and I never made a deposit. I never made a withdrawal. And the only deposits that were made were online. So after like 6 or 7 months, I was in a W hotel in a heroin-infested orgy. And instead of going to my home in Fire Island to go get more cash to keep the party going, I was like, you know what? I have a bank account in this weird bank. I'm going to go and get some money. So I walk in there looking like a drugged out mess, like a bum. And I tried to pull out 50 grand at like 10:30 in the morning. And they gave me some IRS paperwork to fill out, and I filled it out and bullshitted my way in it. And one of the managers of the bank comes up to me and he says, listen, it's a lot of money right now. It's early. Give me like an hour to prepare it for you. I'm like, it's 50 grand. I'm looking at them like, how do you not have 50,000? Like, they had it. The account was red flagged. The feds told them to give me the money, and they got me on camera, and they were able to put a face on who this guy was behind the account with this girl in Virginia. And they let me go, and they gave me the money, and I continued on my way. And they were able to put a face behind Billy Madison, and that's how it all started.
So $1 million of drugs on the arm. How do you get that to her?
By mail.
At one shot?
Yeah, it depends. This chick was getting a lot of MDMA and a lot of LSD.
So what does that look like? Put into perspective in a box, or how many boxes?
1 little gram of LSD is $8 grand.
Oh, just one little. Okay.
1 little gram. 1 gram. This is how potent and strong LSD is. 1 gram of LSD can dose 10,000 people. There's 10,100 UGs, 100 metric grams, inside 1 gram of LSD. It's the most potent, powerful crystal, besides LSD. LSD is very powerful. But have you ever seen the blotter, the artwork? You know the LSD that they put on your tongue? It's a little piece of paper. Mm. No? So LSD starts as a crystal, which 99.9% of the world does never see or never touches. And then that crystal gets broken down into a liquid with alcohol. And then they take that liquid and they use perforated paper, and then they soak a huge sheet of paper inside the liquid. And that's how they break down dosages and amounts through the little squares on the perforated paper. And then you take that little piece of paper, which is considered a hit, and you put it on your tongue. Mm. So that can go through any metal detector. I used to walk through airports with more LSD than I could think of. I remember one time I was walking through LAX, And I get to my gate, and I'm there a few hours early. And I'm looking at the TV, and I see Costa Rica, the largest LSD bust in Costa Rican history. And you got like 3 of these dudes who I knew who they were because I looked them up. And I'm just looking, I'm like, they were in front of a table with all this blotter artwork. And I'm just like, holy fuck. First of all, there's a problem because I gave them those drugs. And second of all, I have more drugs on that table there's more drugs in my pocket than there is on that table. I'm like, I'm getting out of control. This whole thing's out of control. And I knew that one day, the party would be over. But I was just so sick. I was so sick with alcohol and drugs. I was just prolonging my misery.
The Great Rewards Hunt is packed with huge bonuses, thrilling games, and big jackpots. And for new players, there's even more. 500 casino spins on a featured game. Just sign up with code Ian Bick, wager $5, and start spinning. Only at DraftKings Casino. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. 21 plus. Physically present in Michigan, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, West Virginia only. Void in Connecticut and Ontario. Eligibility restrictions apply. New customers only. Non-withdrawable casino spins valid for featured game only and expire in 168 hours. See terms at casino.draftkings.com/promos. Ends 4/27/25 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. So they let you out of the bank that day with the money. What happens?
I just went to living my life. Spas, hotels, hookers. It was just being a criminal. I had a place in borderline Queens in Lake Success. Yeah. I remember I was in Vegas on a meaningless trip. Had nothing to do with business. And I remember these 3 dudes were real sketchy. Like they were always separate and looking at me, and I didn't know if they worked for the casino or if they were feds. And it turned out they were feds. And I'm like, all right, I'm not going out in Vegas. There's no freaking way I'm going out in Vegas. And I knew I had an Interpol warrant for my arrest. I was able to ditch them and I got out. And I took a private plane from Vegas to Teterboro. And then I took a car from Teterboro to Lake Success, which is the borderline of Long Island and Queens. And I put my head down and one thing led to another. And I was reliving a dream that I had 3 times already. But it turned out that wasn't a dream. That was reality. The same 3 dreams that I had about how I was getting caught was the same way that it actually did happen. Like the psychedelics were just insane. Like I knew I was going crazy.
Why did you have an arrest from Interpol? An arrest warrant?
Because they wanted me from other countries. I was shipping drugs all over internationally.
So why didn't they just reach out to America and have them do the bust on you?
They did. The DEA, Homeland Security, and the feds were joint looking for me. They couldn't figure out who I was. Until
you hit that bank.
Yeah.
So now you're back from Vegas. You're at your house. What happens?
At like 4 a.m, 3, 4 a.m, something like that. Kicking the door. The whole SWAT team came in. My whole block was cut off. You know, my neighbors are coming out looking like, he told us he was an accountant. Like, and that was like when I was handcuffed, coming out, walking, looking at the beginning day that was happening. That was the first time in my life that I was like, fuck, like I want kids. And I knew I was done. Like it was just a matter of how bad this is going to be. I knew I was toast, but it was just a matter of how bad who said what, who found what. Conspiracy is crazy. Conspiracy is like worse than getting caught with the drugs. Because the person who rats on you, the weight and the drugs are just what comes out of their mouth. So I knew that I just didn't know how bad it was going to be. I knew it was horrible, but I didn't know how bad it was going to be.
How old were you when you got arrested that day?
I was 24 or 25, something like that.
And this is the first time you'd ever been arrested?
No. I would always get arrested in the state. I probably had like 3 or 4 arrests before that. But in the state, you could always buy your way out. I think the longest bit I ever did before that was 9 months in a county jail. I think I was in like Madison County, Illinois. Yeah, I got caught with like 75 pounds of weed on a joyride. When I got caught with that, I was like, oh, fuck, thank God I only had 75 pounds on me. My life was out of control. Like, I had zero regard for the law.
What was the indictment against you? What were the actual charges?
Conspiracy to distribute like 3 or 4 different drugs.
And did you have co-defendants?
Well, they were all in prison. There was 3 of them, but I literally never met them in my life. I knew who one was, that girl who I told you about. But the other 2, I never sold them drugs. But apparently I was selling all them drugs. And that's all you need. You need more. You just need 2 for a conspiracy. So they were all in, waiting for me to come in so that they can get their time off.
Oh, so they could flip on you and testify.
Well, no, they flipped on me. All the testimonies were out. But you have to, your testimony has to be real. It has to be true. I have to say I'm guilty in order for them to get their time. That's how I think, that's how I felt. I feel like it works in the feds. Like if what they told the feds wasn't true, or if they never found me, how would they get their time off? But I think it was 7 months, maybe a year later, I came in and I said, hi, I'm guilty.
Oh, you pled guilty?
Yeah, I wasn't playing. I was definitely guilty. It was just a matter of, and then I probably had to forfeit another $9 million in Bitcoin with the AUSA that was on portable cold storage devices. The AUSA says to me in front of my lawyer, he goes, I'm telling you right now, if you fuck me on 1 Bitcoin, I remember Bitcoin was about $220 a coin. He said, if you fuck me on 1 coin, he goes, I'm taking your ass out of prison and I'm charging you with money laundering. And then I'm going to let you get comfortable for another 5 years and I'm going to take you out again and charge you for another 20 years of tax evasion. He goes, I'm going to fuck your life over. Nope. You know what he said to me? He said, no kike like you is going to prison rich on my watch. And I looked at him like, this is in New York. I looked at him and I looked at my attorney. He goes, everything. Give him everything.
How did your parents react to your arrest?
They were devastated, but they weren't dumb. I actually refused to look at my parents for over a year. I wouldn't put them on my visiting list. Because I was just so ashamed of the hurt that I caused my mother and my father that I was just so selfish. I was talking to this one guy in prison and he was telling me how he felt the same way. And it took him a few years before he put his mother on his visiting list. And then a week before she was supposed to come, she had a heart attack and died. And I was like, my heart sank and I'm like, oh, fuck. I'm like, I'm putting my mom on my list. And yeah, you can learn a lot with people in prison. If you actually seek a decent conversation and you're a good judge of character by who has what wisdom, you can actually get a lot of good things out of prison. Yes, you've been there. 99% of the people are just bad people. But if you actually look, you can find some things that there are conversations that I've had with people that will never leave my mind, no matter how fried I get or I've become. I remember one time I'm in Manhattan. I just had a heart attack from overdosing. And I get out of the hospital probably like 3-4 days later. And I buy a few bottles of liquor. And I go into what's the park?
Central
Park. And I found this big rock, and I'm sitting on it. I'm drinking my emotions out, my feelings away. And this bum comes up to me, and he asks me for money. And I said, "Are you asking me money for alcohol?" I said, "Because I'll just give you a bottle out of my bag." And he goes, "Yeah, I'm looking for some alcohol." And I was drinking literally a bottle of Johnny Walker Blue. No bag and nothing. Like, no shits. I didn't care about anything. I literally gave the homeless man a bottle of Johnny Walker Blue. And we cheersed. And he had a good distance from me, like. And you know what he said to me? I don't remember too many parts of the conversation, but when he was leaving, he said to me, "May you be the strongest man at your father's funeral." Bro, every time I think of this conversation with this guy, it gives me shivers. Because I analyze it so deeply. If my father would have died any time in the last 12, 15 years after that, I would have been not the strongest guy at my father's funeral. But, like, that's what I aspire to be. Like, you need to live your life and get yourself prepared to be the strongest guy at your father's funeral. Because people respect and feel, what's the word I'm looking for? When your shit's together, when you're emotionally stable, when you're okay with how you're living, people rely on that type of strength. Like, when you can become a guy that people rely on, that's when you know you're doing it right. No one was able to rely on me. I would tell you I'm going to be somewhere, and I'd show up like a week later. Just because I didn't know what fucking planet I'm on. But my intentions were good, you know? But it's good to be a person in life that people rely on and they can count on. When you say something, you do it. That's the type of people I like to surround myself with today.
How many years did you plead out to?
20.
20 years?
Yeah.
Wow. And they sentenced you to the 20?
Yeah, I'll show you my indictment on my phone after...
So you got a 20-year sentence.
20-year sentence, $1 million fine. There's a difference between fine and restitution.
Yep.
And I didn't get the Second Chance Act. And then after 7 years, I got the Second Chance Act, and I got to go home.
Wow.
Otherwise, my out date would be 2034.
So 20 years, they send you...
I was mentally doing 20 years.
Did they send you to a USP first or a medium?
No, a medium.
Medium.
Yeah. I went to Petersburg.
Was that a good place?
There was no such thing as a good place.
Some places are better than others.
I think the only good federal prison that exists is the one in New York.
Otisville. You never got there.
Nah, you're right. I didn't have that type of privilege. That place is real camp fed, so I've heard. But yeah, I went to Petersburg, and then my points dropped, and then I went to I did a lot of time in Oklahoma, the transfer. That was a nightmare.
Why do you spend a lot of time there?
Because when your points drop, they keep moving you. And then spent a lot of time in, obviously, Brooklyn, MDC. And then I went to Danbury. You want to tell the audience where we collided?
Well, I'll let you tell the story, man. This is your episode.
So we actually were in solitary confinement together. You were in a cell with a friend of mine, and I was two cells down. I don't know if you remember, I forgot the lieutenant's name, but this guy saved my life.
I know you're talking about the guy with
Italian dude with all the tattoos.
Yeah. I don't know the name of it.
He was like kind of heavy set.
Yep. He was the coolest lieutenant there.
He saved my life. I had gotten into an altercation with somebody and did something real stupid. And they wanted me to rat on myself because they weren't saying what I did to this guy.
Purcelli.
Okay,
sorry.
I owe this guy a letter. Like, this guy saved my life. So he said, look, Cook, if you don't admit that you did this, you're going to go out on the yard. And I'm telling you right now, there's a hit out for your life on that yard. He goes, if you don't tell me the truth, he goes, you want to be a tough guy and not say you did it? He goes, I'm telling you, it's going to be the dumbest thing you ever did. For some reason, this guy convinced me that he was really on my side. And he goes, you have one more chance to tell me the truth. He goes, because if you don't, I'm going to release you in about a week. And you're a dead man on that yard. And I'm like, am I really a dead man? Like, I don't believe it. But I'm like, you know what? For some reason, I believed him. Purcelli, I owe that dude a fucking hug.
And we didn't even know we were in the shoe together, but me and you met a couple of weeks ago and we were just talking. We're like, oh, where'd you do time? It's funny how people that went to prison, you ask each other, where'd you do time? Are you in the feds? We're talking and then, oh, what year were you there? And then I say, and they're like, oh. And I was like, well,
I put you right on the phone with your cellie. Like,
yeah, that's funny. Can you tell the rabbi smuggling story?
But hold on, I want to finish this one. So I admit to doing the crime. And only in the feds can this happen. Like, so he says, all right, thank you for admitting you did it. I'm going to keep you in here for another month. Your points are going to drop, and now you're going to go to Miami. And I'm like, score. So I went to Miami, and that's, you know. But I don't know if you know what happened in Danbury. A very interesting fella died in Danbury.
That was in the chow hall.
No. His name was David Brooks. I've seen so many people die in prison. It's ridiculous. David Brooks was a contractor for the U.S. military. He sold armored vests to the United States government. And this guy was a Jewish guy. He was definitely a shyster and a thief, so he probably did what they said he did. But he was skimping out on the type of steel that he was putting inside the armored vests. And the company was public, and he probably did it. If I was a betting man, he probably did do it. But anyway, he actually asked me to protect him for $5,000 a week. And I said, look, David, if you need to pay me $5,000 a week, you're fucked. I don't want to get involved in whatever you. And he came from Miami. So he bunked with me, and I started to read his paperwork and his chest. And you know who wrote his 2255?
Who?
You know what the 2255 is? The appeal?
Yeah.
Alan Dershowitz.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He paid Alan Dershowitz $5 million to write his 2255. And me being me, I personally felt that it was like the most worst written 2255 I've ever read. And I was like, David, how the hell did you win on appeal with this bullshit? And I'm not going to say who he was blackmailing, but he was blackmailing people. People in politics who have a reputation for killing people. And that's when I knew I wanted nothing to do with this whole situation. And I read his whole treasure chest, and I saw things I never wanted to see. And the federal government killed him at Pill Line. 3 days later.
The federal government killed him.
What he told me was going to happen happened.
Okay.
3 days later.
What happened?
He got murdered.
By who?
The government.
But how did they murder him?
They spiked him at Pill Line.
Do you believe this?
100%. You don't. What I saw? Yeah.
So he's in Pill Line.
Yeah.
Do you know what they gave him?
No. But I do know that that they don't count you when you're not standing up, correct?
Yeah.
They count us three times a day?
Except for the at night count.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to be standing, right? Well, David Brooks was dead in my arms on the floor while I'm yelling to get a medic. And the officer, I believe his name is Fernandez or Hernandez. You know what he said when David Brooks and everyone was looking at him dead in my arms, dry heaving? He said he's supposed to be down there. And you know what happened to that officer? I believe maybe a year later, he got charged with raping a female inmate, and now he's in prison. You could look this up. This is all verifiable.
I read that case. I know.
David Brooks died in my arms.
Well, I believe he died. I just don't know if the government had him whacked.
Yeah,
And you didn't report that at all, what you knew.
I'll tell you what. I took 2 bloods so I got called to the warden's office.
After the death.
Yeah. And I took 2 bloods with me because you take people with you to when you get called. And she's like, if I was you, I would keep them outside. I said, guys, come with me. I don't need any rumors. She said, there are people who are going to be coming to visit you very soon. If you're smart, you would say you don't know much. His lawyers came to see me. A lawyer from the federal government came to see me. It was a big thing because the problem is now his whole case is on appeal. So the federal government had, I believe, close to like $200 million worth of stock that they seized from him all that time. And are you familiar with the Aaron Hernandez case?
Of course.
So if Aaron Hernandez would have won, he would have had to get everything given back to him that he lost.
Like what? I didn't know they seized money.
They seize money, cars, whatever they take. Whatever damages that you have incurred, they have to give back to you. So the $200 million or something to that extreme of a number that the federal government seized from David Brooks in stock and destroyed the stock price, the federal government would need to replace all that if he won on appeal. So there's real money at stake here. He theoretically didn't die as a criminal because he was on appeal. So the conviction doesn't stand. That's why Aaron Hernandez probably killed himself. I don't know much about. He was in state, so I have no knowledge of any of that.
The appeal aspect has anything to do with it, right? I think once you die, it's.
If you die while on appeal, the conviction doesn't stand.
No, but even if you die when you're already convicted.
You're not convicted if you're on appeal and you won. The conviction isn't final. That's why Aaron Hernandez probably killed himself. I don't know the specifics of that case, but if I was Aaron Hernandez, I would have killed myself too because my family would get back the contract money that New England wasn't giving the family.
And life insurance maybe too?
Everything, whatever he had going on, yeah. All that gets reversed. Yeah. So like there's real money involved when someone dies while on appeal. You don't want to kill yourself when you're on appeal and you were granted an appeal. How hard is it to get granted an appeal in the feds?
Extremely hard.
You have a better shot of winning the lotto. Nobody wins appeals. Like even if you didn't do it, like you're not gonna. It's very hard.
You have a better odds waiting for the government to make something like the Second Chance Act, which happened after years and years to get out of prison than winning on appeal.
Yeah.
Well, that's how all those jailhouse lawyers get rich. They write people's 2255s.
And they're selling hope.
And people buy into that in prison.
Yeah, but look, when you're dealing with a heavy sentence, what else are you going to survive on?
And I've seen some guys get lucky.
Yeah.
But it's once in a blue moon.
But who knows how it turns out? Just because you were granted the appeal doesn't mean you're going to win it.
Who did you run with in prison, specifically in like the medium when you actually had
the white people?
But any type.
But I would not mess around with the skinheads or anything. I tried to find people that were. When I stopped drinking and that's when I started to run like solo. Because like that's when I was on a whole different path. I wasn't playing any prison politics. I wasn't, doing stupid shit. When I was in Brooklyn, early in my stages of prison, I made a deal with one of the Bloods that I was going to buy up all the drugs and alcohol that were coming into the unit for the week. But I made a handshake deal. This is how sick I was. I made a handshake deal that I had to sell to everybody. So the dude brings in all the bottles of liquor and all the K2. And within that night, he came in a little late with the stuff. And then this was how sick my addiction was. I made a handshake deal with the head shot caller of the Bloods that there was going to be no problems. I wasn't going to be racist or pick whoever had the money, whoever paid me first gets it. That night, I did all the drugs in my cell, and I drank all the liquor. I believe 2, 3 in the morning, I'm thinking either I'm going to be overdosing soon, or if I make it through this night, I'm a dead man anyway. Because everyone is fiending for. I got 100 guys in this unit, fiending for drugs and alcohol, knowing that it's time, and they're already a half a night late. And these fiending drug addicts and alcoholics are waiting for their shit, and I just ingested it all in one night. And I knew I was fucked. So I found a dude who was actually a skinhead. And first thing in the morning, I just pummeled the shit out of him. This dude was a military dude too. I beat the fucking brakes off of him. I had to go, and I knew I had to get the hell out of this unit. This unit's not going to like me very much real soon. And that's how I got, SIS came, and they're like, got me right out. I'm like, thank you. But a normal human being would be like, I'm going to sell drugs to everybody, right? I just didn't care about the consequences. My addiction took priority over everybody. I didn't care about your fix. I didn't care about anything. I was just a very selfish human being. But once I found sobriety, my whole life changed. And I went from selling drugs to selling hope. I'm like a hope dealer. That's what we do at my company. We sell change.
Well, before we get there, just tell us the rabbi story at Danbury, because you were there during when that was happening.
So we were paying the rabbi to smuggle us in food once a week. And oh my God, we were getting some real good stuff. Like salmon, lox, rugula. The most weirdest shit. All shopped in the best places in Brooklyn. And we would get all that stuff there. And bagels. A lot of the people on the compound knew that the Jews, this little Jewish crew, had a pipeline from the real world. And some of the other Jews who we didn't like, who were really entitled, ratted on us. And this poor chaplain, this dude was really looking out for us. And he put his career on the line to do it too. I guess it was financially, worth it for him. But this dude, in my opinion, he was doing an amazing deed. Prison is, I wouldn't want my worst enemy in prison. If I couldn't deal with you on my own, prison it's not a humane place. But many of us, we all deserve to be there for the most part. But this chaplain, he got in trouble. Did you know he got in trouble?
Yeah, so when I was in the SHU, I knew that's when the investigation, Sammy, who was one of the ringleaders in all of this, who I guess was, his family was friends with the chaplain or whatever it was. He had already been in there for 3 months under investigation, 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
And he got cleared eventually and left the SHU while I was still there.
Yeah, but the chaplain lost his job because the other Jews were ratting on him.
So they must have fired the chaplain, and because I know they had him on phone duty.
Yeah, I felt so bad for that guy. There weren't too many times in my life where I would think about other people during those times, but I actually had such empathy for that guy. That guy really did us a solid. He really wanted to make our hell just a little bit better.
I learned something about prison politics in that moment too, was that some of those people that were in that Jewish community did have bad paperwork, or they had, sex offender charges, but the other inmates still looked at them with a lot of respect because they were in control of the pipeline.
I'll tell you what, like, if you're a sex offender and you get people to look at you in a different way, it's very rare. Very rare. Most sex offenders are just trying to survive. And I wouldn't want to be a sex offender. Just the thought of it is a nightmare. But it's very hard to get people to look at you differently as a sex offender. You got to be doing something right. But like, for instance, like, none of this prison politics means anything in the real world. You know, like, there are people who I watch and I'm just like, I can see people on the street and I'm like, this dude can't get rid of prison out of his mind. Like, he can't outgrow it. He's in that prison mentality. You have to be able to be versatile and be like a chameleon. For instance, we all came into prison on the street. Your street life and your prison life, you have to be able to adjust to the prison life. But the key is to be able to readjust when you get out. Like, I feel like this is God's world, right? I feel like all my experiences in prison bring me to this point in the real world. Everything's a teaching moment. But if you choose to stay in that prison mode, you're just as locked up as you were. Like, I only take the good stuff. The wisdom, the personalities of people, and I use it all in my personal and business life to try not to make any mistakes. Or I'll be like, oh, I remember this guy and he had a personality like this. It was very narcissistic. I'm going to stay away from this guy in business because he reminds me of that guy. Or like, I get very technical and analytical when it comes to like comparing, but I try and capitalize off of all my hell and I use it as fuel for today. And I try and keep myself out of that prison mentality because it's not, you need to grow from it. Otherwise, what are you doing,
Did you get sober before your sentence got commuted or right around that time period?
2.5 years before.
Why did you decide to get sober in prison?
That's a crazy story. I found sobriety in solitary confinement. I'll give it a short version. I attempted to pay a prison guard $5,000 to bring me in whiskey, and he told me he would. And I gave him a name and a number. And I knew the person lived in Brooklyn, so he'd get it quick. And he looked me in the face. He said, "All right, Cook, I got you." And this is on the 8th floor. I think it's the 8th or 9th floor in MDC Brooklyn, whatever the highest floor is. I believe it's the 8th or 9th floor, whatever. So for a whole day, I'm pacing my cell like a sick dog, refusing to eat. I won't eat because I wanted my stomach to be as dry as possible so that I would enjoy the burn. And my imagination was so vivid. And the next day comes, he gets back on the deck. He takes my tray. He says, "I'll be right back. I got what you need, Cook." And he opens up my little slot door and he throws me the big blue book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Can you believe that shit? This dude sold me that he was going to get money for me and bring me in my juice. And I threw the book against the wall. Like, I called him every derogatory name under the sun. Like, just praying that this dude will open up the door because this 7-foot dude, I was going to eat him. And obviously, they're not opening that door for nothing. After about like 3-4 weeks, I opened up the book and I started reading it and I was like, this book is written for me. And like, I had this God moment. Like, I'm on my knees, feeling like who knows what time it was, right? On my knees, feeling like I'm floating in space, talking to God, like apologizing for leaving him and just apologizing for everything that I woke up. I felt like what it felt like to be human again. And I read the book probably 8 times before I got out of that was like a year and a month of solitary. But the second I got out of that solitary confinement, I was starting to live right. I did my time differently. I started educating myself, reading PhD research, studying quantum entanglement, quantum physics, AI. And I just started preparing myself to live like a normal human being. Because I knew one day I'm going to get out and I'm going to be a law-abiding human being. It might not feel normal, but I'm going to do everything that I know is normal, regardless how normal it feels. And I made that conscious decision that I was not going to go back to this life again. And I was going to live a life sober.
Have you lived up to that promise?
Yeah. That was September 1st, 2016. Never went back.
How did you feel when your sentence got commuted because of the First Step Act?
It was just too surreal. It made me realize that like life might not be what you think it's going to be when you wake up tomorrow. Like you think you know how tomorrow is going to be, but you don't have a freaking clue. You don't know what you're going to experience, what you're going to go through, what direction in life God's going to put you on. Prison really taught me how to live life. I wouldn't do it. I would do it all over again. It's sick, but I wouldn't be where I am today without prison. You know what the judge said to me when she gave me my time? When she told me how much time, I'm like, I can't do that much time. She looked me in the face and said, do as much time as you can, and then hang up. She literally said this to me. She basically told me to kill myself. And I Judge, what was her name? Judge Allen, Virginia. She was like, she gave me what I needed. I never let those words leave my brain in my whole prison career, my federal prison career. I woke up, I literally went every day saying, if I can't do this, I'm just going to kill myself today. And I kind of learned how to live life one day at a time. Like only focus on today. If I can't get through today, I'll just hang up. I've had enough. But ironically, even though I wasn't sober, I was, I learned how to do one day at a time. And that was the greatest thing I ever learned in prison, was how to do one day at a time.
How much time did you end up doing total?
Like 7 years and a few months.
And did you have a lot of supervised release after? Or?
3 years.
Okay.
But I didn't even know I was on, I'm off paper obviously now, but I didn't know I was on supervised release. Like after like 2 or 3 times of going in and getting pissed, like piss test.
Yeah, they kind of let you go.
They're like, look, we have a lot of people on the street telling us that you're really doing amazing things. Like you're not going to see us much. After those few months, I was good. I would only be reminded that I was on probation when people would remind me I'm on probation. Because I was just doing the right thing and living my life and, figuring it out. But when you're doing the right thing, you don't know you're on probation until people remind you. Because you're constantly doing the right thing. It's repetitive. When you have something to hide, or when your conscience is nagging on you, that's when you know you're on probation. You're doing the wrong thing. You shouldn't be doing that.
I felt that way the whole probation, only because I opened up some credit cards without permission because I wanted to build my credit. It was dumb. They weren't letting me get credit cards. So I was kind of like on edge. But what saved me was COVID. Because they kind of relaxed everything.
Was that in your terms of probation?
That I couldn't open up credit cards.
I didn't have those terms.
Yeah, I couldn't open up credit cards without approval of the probation officer, and they kept denying it. It was dumb. I wasn't doing anything illegal. It wasn't illegal to have a credit card. But
you didn't have normal rights like everyone else had.
Yeah, like I had all these restrictions, but luckily COVID helped me skate under the radar. And then when they did find out I opened a bunch, I had gotten permission to open one, so I opened up a bunch at the same time. And then by the time...
What is that called, stacking?
I don't know, I guess. And then I closed them all when they they yelled at me about it, but they closed it because they couldn't really jam me up because I did get permission, but it wasn't clarified whether it was one or the other. Then I started reopening some, and by the time they sent me the financial affidavit to fill out, where you got to report your credit and all of that, I had 2 days left on my probation, so I just stalled them, and then I was scot clear.
What did that feel like when you got off?
Oh, it was a blessing. It still didn't feel real for a while because you don't know.
It takes a few months to be like, I'm really free. Can I do this?
Yeah, because you don't know if anything, you just don't know. But I knew I wasn't committing a new crime. I just wasn't following like, kind of silly rules, but.
Did you have, like, when you came out, did you feel like, did you stumble upon people like on like, I guess like podcasts and people who influenced you, like new influences? Because I didn't have anyone who influenced me in my life. So I now have all these new influences of, people. And
I think had I been on TikTok, just like as a user during that time, I would have found that. But I didn't. All I had was Instagram and Facebook, and I was in grind mode. I was working a job, and that ate up my whole life. I think had I been on TikTok, like had my own TikTok account, just as like a viewer, I would have started what I started now during COVID, which would have really blown up because that's when all like the prison content was coming out. Everyone was at home, but I didn't. So everything worked out the way it worked out.
For me, that job was so depressing because I knew I wasn't doing what I was meant to be living for.
But I think it's crucial to your development to get to where you want to go.
It's ego breaking.
Because I see a lot of guys that get out that want to start the business right away and they want to get back into the fast life, which some people have never worked a regular job after getting out of prison. A lot of the time because they have the resources where they don't need to. But it's a very
Most people
humbling.
don't have those resources.
Yeah.
The government takes them all.
And a lot of those people also go back to selling drugs, and that's why they get violated during supervised release. But my best advice to anyone is go work a regular job when you get out of prison.
Or a job that aligns with what your interests are. Mm-hmm. So you can get a different perspective of what it's like on the other end.
But it feels good having some cash in your pocket. You're doing it. It gives you something to do.
Yeah.
And then when you're ready, you build up a little nest egg or whatever you got to do, and then you quit.
And if it doesn't work out, you can go back to your shitty job.
See, I can always go back to a job.
Like if all hell breaks loose in my life, I could just go back to a shitty job and rebuild up. And, nobody believed in me with what I was doing.
So tell us what you were doing and how you rebuilt your life.
So I have an app approved on the Apple App Store. It's a 40-day outpatient program. I have artificial intelligence built in, proprietary algorithms. I have 2 scientific discoveries built into that app that I won't go to the patent office on. And I just help people find sobriety. And, a lot of people they have real professions and they're struggling with alcohol and substance abuse and they can't ask for help. A cop can't say I have a problem. He'll be on desk duty for 2 years. He'll lose his gun and have a mental health issue on his file. Teachers, lawyers, God forbid a lawyer who tried cases goes to get help for addiction. I mean, all those cases are on appeal. So I allow people to get help anonymously without having to publicly ask for help. And I'm building out a platform very similar to a platform that they have in the prison system, just outside of prison. And my whole thing is I just want to reach and touch as many people as possible. I wrote this program in prison, 95% of it in prison. And all I did was study PhD research associated with addiction because I needed to understand my disease. I had the experience being a criminal and a drug addict, but I didn't have the scientific experience of the other half of completing the other half of the understanding. Doctors only have one half. A doctor doesn't have the time to ruin his life, go to prison, become an alcoholic, shoot dope, and become doctor. Like, you're only going to do that later on in your life, right? So if you told me, Spencer, like, how many people do you want to help? To me, the number's endless because I need to make up for everything that I did in life and more and feel fulfilled. Because that's what you do. That's what I do. I think the name of the game is how do I live this life before I die and how do I get some sort of fulfillment?
Purpose, yeah. You got to have purpose in life.
Yeah. I had to call somebody today who I was relying on to help me with something to remind him that I'm dying. He's like, you're dying? Like, what kind of disease do you have? I said, I don't know, but I'm dying each day. Every day I'm getting closer to my death and I'm waiting for you to help me with this. I'm like, you have shares of, like, come on. Like, let's not, you don't know when I'm going to die. I don't know when I'm going to die, but I know I'm dying. Sometimes I need to remind people, like, bro, like, you might not live until you're 80. Let's get this shit done now. And prison also changed my mind with how I analyze time. You know, it's a very tricky thing. It's all on how you perceive it. And how much time did we waste? You know? To me, that was depressing. When I woke up, realizing how much time I wasted with meaningless people inside meaningless prison cells, you just got to forgive yourself and move on and stop wasting time. You know, live life with purpose. Be very selective who you spend time with. That's the most valuable commodity I got to my name. Doesn't matter what's in your bank account. The richest people in the world are trying to figure out how to buy more time, and they still can't. So if they can't find it, I definitely can't find it. You know?
What's the life lesson you want people to take away from hearing your story today?
Your feelings, your mind needs to be stronger than your feelings. Think about it. Like every bad decision you ever made in your life probably was due to overriding your feelings over your mind, right? Your feelings tell you it's okay to stay in bed. But my mind tells me to get the hell out of bed. You know, my feelings feed my ego. But my mind tells the ego where to go. You know, what happens to you today, it's not the end result. The second you stay down, that's when you lose. You know, and also I want to remind people that if you take every shitty situation you've ever been in and you add it all up, your success rate is still 100% because you've made it through. So no matter what's going on in your life, things aren't working out the way they're going, you know, that you want, or they're not happening as fast as you want, or someone did something to you, or you did something, whatever it is, it's okay. You have your track record's 100%. You'll get through it. Just do the next right thing and move on, and you know, make an amends and keep it moving.
Spencer, I appreciate you coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
I'm glad we got to sit down and make this happen. And who connected us again? Chris, yeah, he has the app in the
he's got
prison systems.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a great story, by the way.
Yeah.
Do we have time or no?
Yeah, share it. Yeah.
I'll tell one more story.
Of course.
I'm in some prison cells somewhere, and I'm reading a Forbes magazine where this guy did like 14 years in prison, got out, found his love for making bread, sold his bread company for like $400 million, something ridiculous like that. His name was Dave Dale. So one night I decided to get a piece of paper and a pencil, and I wrote him. Now, we do these things just to pass the time, right? So I wrote him. Obviously, the letter never made it anywhere, or he didn't get it, or whatever. But basically, I was inspired by his story and motivated by him. And I wrote him. Nothing happened. Many, many, many years later, 10 years later, I signed a deal with a tablet company. And the COO who signed me, we're going to be in like 12 different prisons real soon. I'm in kitchen. And he says, Chris goes to me, he goes, by the way, do you like Dave's Killer Bread? And I'm like, I'm literally opening up Dave's Killer Bread, making toast right now. He goes, that's so funny because Dave is the one who gave me like $5-6 million to start the company. And I'm like, no shit. I'm like, I wrote this guy a decade ago telling him how motivated and inspired he made me. And then 10 years later, I built this company and signed a deal with his company. I'm like, you can't make that up.
Yeah, that's awesome. I remember I first came across Dave Killer's Bread when I was at Whole Foods working. And Chris was telling me that story, and I was like, yeah, I know the brand because I'd see it every day on the shelves. That's so cool.
Only someone who's been through the system would fund something like that.
Yeah. Well, I hope to meet him one day and have him on the show. That would be a great guest.
Me too.
Everyone loves Dave's Killer Bread.
I got his email. We'll email him together.
I think Chris said he does like sabbaticals every...
Yeah, he's on a sabbatical right now.
So when he comes back, he'll connect us. So
I'm going to see if I can make that happen with us.
That would be great, man. Yeah. I appreciate you, man. And, enjoy the rest of the day. Glad you're staying local in Long Island. So I'm sure I'll see you around.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for having me.
I'll have to get some good smoked salmon and bagel out there.
I'll get you whatever you need.
Yeah. Oh, I should have asked you for that today. Yeah, I know. You asked me if I want anything for New York. That's what I should have said.
Yeah.
All right. Take care, brother.
Thank you.